What's good, my beautiful people? This is Anthony Mitchell, host of the End Zone Club. And today we do have a very inspiring episode just for you guys. But I do want to preface it by saying, bear with me on today's episode. For some odd reason, my audio had just a little weird interference going on. But don't let that take away from today's listening experience. So let's get started. In 3, 2, 1. All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the End Zone Club, where, as always, we have conversations that are designed to push us from walking into potential to actually fulfill our purpose. And guess what? Today, I got a special guest in the building. So you guys will not be hearing from my lonesome voice today. But with all hearts, minds composed, I'd like to introduce a special guest who's going to take us on a special journey. And with that said, who do we have with us today?
You have Borah Wells.
Let me say this, guys. It's not every day that we get an opportunity to get bright lights that are shining in the community on here on the End Zone Club with us, sharing just insightful stories that I think are designed to encourage us all. So with that said, I'm going to take a step back, Mr. Borah, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Hello. Thank you so much. I'm Borah Wells. Most people know me by D. I am currently the culinary instructor for a youth development program called Liberty's Kitchen, and I'm also the head chef for a community feeding program. And I also have a free summer camp that I direct for children in one of the impoverished communities here in New Orleans. I'm a retired sports exec. I was with the Chicago Bulls for 19 years. I was the manager of talent and the founder of the Bulls Entertainment Network, which is basically the booking agency that they have within their organization right now.
So, just in a nutshell, you kind of said a lot. So,
At the end.
The chef portion, I want to go back because I'm a history buff. You said 19 years as a sports exec. But before we get there, fast track us from, just kind of tell us a little bit about where you're from and what got you to that point with the Chicago Bulls. I know this story is going to be good.
Okay. I was born and raised in Chicago, mostly in the Bronzeville area, and graduated from Dunbar High School in 1988. Yes, 1988. And my first job was in a bakery at Marshall Fields, downtown Chicago. That was my first taste of a culinary job. So I kind of bounced around like teenagers do from one job to another. Landed a job at what's called the Swiss Hotel right now, but it was called the Swiss Grand Hotel back then, in the catering department. And they moved me around a lot, and I got a chance to start putting on a lot of events and learning the nuts and bolts of event planning, event assignment, event layout and design. So I was really getting excited and interested in event planning. So bounced around some more as teenagers do again, and ended up getting laid off from a job. And while I was having my job search, I ran into this agency that was interested in what the potential employee was interested in. And I told them I really wanted to get into marketing. I really wanted to get into events. And the manager there told me that she had an organization that put on lots and lots of events every year. And she wanted to just send me over to them and see what they thought about me and what they thought about my ideas. It turns out that place was the Chicago Bulls. So that was in June of 1995. So
thing when I was just kind of thinking about your story, I didn't quite know when the genesis of your time with the Chicago Bulls was, but when you say 95, that's that's at the height. So I'm imagining just by right of that, like, you probably walked into a position that would have been highly sought after. Would you say that?
I I agree. And actually, a lot of people, they were doing all kinds of little gimmicks and gags to try to stand out from everyone. One of the most common, people would send a gym shoe along with their resume and say, I'm just trying to get my foot in the door. Just to try to stand out among everyone else, because there were thousands and thousands of applicants for jobs positions that didn't even exist. So, I was very blessed and very fortunate to walk in when I did. It was at the lowest yet highest point of the Bulls in the 90s.
So from that particular time in your story, what do you think it was about you that stood out that you probably would recommend younger people to kind of learn this particular trait or implement that in their searches?
For one thing, I've held conversations. I've never interviewed well. I've always just went in and had a conversation. When I tried to just do an interview, it never went well for me. But when I started learning how to just see that person as just what they are, a person, and have a conversation with them, they were able to see other parts about me. Because I went into that job completely, insert air quotes, underqualified for the position. They required a degree, which I did not have. They required sports experience, which I did not have. So I just walked in there on sheer personality, or as the director who hired me told the agency, he hired me on my sheer audacity.
And I think that's very important. Trait just to learn how to have simple conversation, even just by right of a lot of what we do, whether in youth pastoring and ministry, working military. There's a lot of favor that can be given just by learning how to say hello.
It's true. And one of the other things that I first interviewed with the VP's assistant, and then I interviewed with the managers that I would eventually work for, and then I interviewed with the director. And what the VP's assistant as well as the manager said was that with all of the bells and whistles that everybody attached to their applications, that I was one of the only ones who actually sent a thank you card after each interview and actually spoke about things that we talked about in the interview. So not just a generic interview. I learned that from my brother, because he got a job years ago in a corporation and he was 15 years old. And the reason he got the job was he was the only one who sent a thank you note after the interview. So that's an important thing there. Show gratitude.
I'm taking a note of that. Taking gratitude, having communication. But here's a third thing I want to ask you in regard before we pivot in a different direction. You get in a room like that, coming from where you come from, how do you feel like, hey, I belong in this room with these people that I'm interviewing with?
A lot of it is do your homework, because if you find out ahead of time as much as you can about not so much the company but the culture of the organization. We didn't have social media back in the 90s, but I was able to go to the library, and I was able to get all the old media guides from the Bulls and all the old yearbooks, and just kind of read and look at the people and see what little quotes and little blurbs and stuff that people said in those articles, the things that were important to the organization, as far as looking at their charities, their featured nonprofits, and that prepared me to try to find some kind of commonality. Because even though it was the Chicago Bulls and that was exciting, if I didn't feel like I was a fit, I wouldn't have even put myself in that position to try to get a job there. And so I was able to just do my homework and come in the door feeling a little more comfortable, because I wasn't really coming into that strange of a room.
I think a lot of people could really gain just some insight from what you just shared, because sometimes people will accept anything that's offered. And I think when you talked about if you didn't feel like that was a good fit for you, you wouldn't have walked through that door. Now, with that said, I want to pivot for a moment, because I don't know how much you can share, but working with the Chicago Bulls during the 95 season, which 95-96, won a title.
Yes.
Have like this. What was that first pinch me moment? I'm actually here. What was that like?
I will say it was quite surreal. But by the time we got to that point, to the championship, there had been so many unreal moments, am I really here moments, that it was more of an anticipatory feeling. We got to get to this we. It became a we thing. I'm not working with the Bulls. I am a Bull. So, but leading up to that the magic happened really leading up to that point, watching Michael Jordan from a few feet away for the first time. that was magical. Just even my first game and just my first like scrimmage that we had, and just seeing how big everybody was. That's my first impression was, man, these guys are tall. What are y'all eating? And then getting a chance to meet some of those players and getting to know them again as people, not just as players.
So, of course, I have to ask you, because you brought his name up, I was not going to do this. Is there a Jordan story that you can share?
Yes, I can. And it's a testimony to him. This was my first preseason with the Bulls, and the Bulls had gifted us with these really nice notebooks that had made out of basketball material. This is relevant to the story. So I'm walking in the tunnels where the locker rooms are, and this particular security guard tried to take my notebook from me. Like, he was really kind of in bully mode, and he was trying to take the notebook. And as I'm kind of arguing with this guy, I hear all these feet coming. And the feet were Michael and his entourage, because it's true, he had an entourage everywhere he went, including just going to the locker room. And he comes around the corner and he says, hey, and I won't say the guy's name. He's like, hey, give her notebook back and leave her alone. Now, the cherry on that Sunday was he turned to me and went, Deborah, stay away from him, and I'll tell you why later.
So wait a minute. My name?
He knew my name.
Wow.
And then I found out he made it a point to know everyone's name.
You know, I can see that, because I'm going to share my Jordan story. I don't think I've ever shared this on air before, but Jordan had a brother who was in the military, who was actually stationed. We lived in the same neighborhood, and he was maybe a block or two away. So every day coming by, the bus used to drive by his home, and he had a vehicle that had a Jordan sticker on the back. And I remember one afternoon, actually, his parents, this was around 91, I believe, his parents were outside, his mom and dad. And later on, Jordan actually came up, and we were all outside playing. And like the kids that we are, my sister went and knocked on the door and asked if Jordan could come outside and play. And it was so crazy, because whenever he left, he waved at us. And that was like the craziest thing, because, again, you said something important. Like, we didn't know these were like really people. He's this larger than life character, but he acknowledged us and he smiled at us. And, you know, that was just like the biggest thing. So to hear you share it from that experience, I'm just like, wow. But what was that energy like in that stadium every night? Did it ever get old, or was it just always every day you come to work and it looks like the last dance?
But it was the energy was electric. Actually, the last dance, from what I've heard, because I didn't watch it, I was there, so I didn't want to watch it.
Watch it.
I don't want to. But I'm told that, you know, they kind of actually still watered it down because it wasn't from enough perspectives.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I didn't watch it, but the fans brought so much energy into the game. The players had energy. You had players cheering and jumping up and down, and John Haley jumping up on the seats and swinging his towel, and just it didn't matter if he didn't play in the game, which most of the time he didn't play in the game, but he was the biggest cheerleader. He was a bigger cheerleader than the Lovables. He was the first one out there running out, giving hugs and jumping up and down, and it was like that every night. I got really spoiled, because that season we didn't lose a home game until April. We went through the entire season, and we got 2 weeks away from the playoffs and lost our first home game to the Knicks.
You know, Jordan was such an iconic character. As you were saying about The Last Dance, everybody kind of put Jordan in a certain light, but I have to be honest. From that team, Dennis Rodman and his energy, I would have loved to have saw that whole experience firsthand.
Yeah, Dennis, he had some incredible energy, and he was just an incredible person. Just a great human, honestly, he is.
I can see that. But one thing I do want to do, because you talked about 19 years of experience, it's a long time, and I can't quite remember when Derrick Rose came in, but did you get a chance to see him in his early stages?
I did. Yeah, I was there from 95 until 2014. So yeah, I did get to witness Derrick Rose, witness his ups and his downs. His amazing season, yes.
So Derek is also one of my favorite people. He actually played here in Memphis at the University of Memphis. Very big draw in the city, and it's been unfortunate. He has come to town a few times, but I have not gotten a chance to see him. Is there a story from that MVP season that you remember just from athleticism, or because he's always, for me, seemed like a kind of guy I've always watched him interact with the kids. He seems to be really good with kids. What was that like, seeing him up close and personal?
Now, by the time Derek came, I wasn't watching a lot of the games because at that point I had been given a lot more responsibility. So I was kind of producing the game. So my back was to the game. I was in the production tunnel with my back to the game most of the game, dealing with whatever next set of entertainment was supposed to happen. But as a person and dealing with Derek at different meet and greets and signing events, very gracious, very humble young man. I think it took a long time for it to even hit him just who he was. He's just like, man, I'm playing basketball. I love to play basketball, and that's what I'm doing. So, I think it took a minute, more than a minute, for him to actually realize you are not just Derrick Rose. You are Derrick Rose. So, but he's always remained humble and always remained polite. Had a scandal or two, but who doesn't? So
that's part of the game. When you're in that kind of limelight, it's not a matter of if, but more or less when.
Yeah, I always said the only thing I ever knocked Derek for, and it was not a knock, is he liked to cut apples and eat the slices as he cut them. He fell asleep with the knife in his hand, cut himself really bad.
Oh boy.
So I talked about him for that. But otherwise, there was nothing really, there's nothing really that I could ever say bad about Derek, honestly. And his mother and his family came from a really good family. His parents very involved, but also very humble people. You didn't see them all marching in with their furs and their, and the Louis Vuittons and all that. They just kind of came to the game, cheered for their son, did what they were supposed to do.
I've heard a lot of those stories. There's a young man who's actually he's in a wheelchair, and he was sharing a personal story with me about Derek came somewhere. I can't remember what the city was, and he ran into Derek. And, I guess sometimes as players are first getting off the bus and they're trying to get everything set up. Sometimes it's a hassle. They got places to go, people to meet. And Derek said, hey, if you catch me on game day, I'm going to sign whatever you have. And the young man at first thought Derek was blowing him off. Mm-hmm. He just happened to see him out somewhere a few days later. And he was like, man, I thought you were going to bring the items. Like, come on, let's sign it now. And the fact that Derek not only remembered the guy, he remembered his name and what his promise was. And he signed everything he had, took pictures with him, and was very gracious. Mm-hmm. Hearing that story from that young man, how it impacted him, that's the kind of stuff that stood out to me. But while we're speaking about impact, I have been also blessed to have a few friends that play for the Chicago Bears, and sometimes have been blessed from their position of impacting people from their spots. Mm-hmm. What you did as a talent exec and then into production, did you ever feel like your job was meaningful and that it was impacting people, or maybe you opened some doors for some people that came back and thanked you later? Is there like a story from that just makes you proud that you always, hold close to the vest?
Yeah, actually I have many, but one of them that I really hold dear, about 22 years ago, there was a young man, 15-year-old, who, can you hear me? Oh no.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I lost everything. Okay. But there was a young man who was 15 years old, and he was looking for something to do. His mother wanted him to have something off the streets. He lived on the other side of the tracks, literally. It was a set of projects on the other side of our tracks. And she wanted him to have a safe place to go. And he wanted to make money. He loved basketball. So, he was a little young for the ball boy program, but I got him on to the ball boy program anyway. And he stayed there. That was around the year, either 99 or 2000. It was around that time. And he stayed there until 2019. Became the assistant equipment manager. He worked his way up. He moved up. He was able to go to college. He's able to mentor. He's still mentoring young men. He now works for Metro. Really good job. So, but he'll shout me out every once in a while and just remind me, I remember how I got there.
Wow.
So he was there even years after I left. And I have different former entertainers or former game day staff who now have moved on to either having the same job in other cities. I have game entertainment managers in different cities right now and different types of teams. I have bodybuilders. I have actors. Real live screen actors. And a lot of them said that they saw the Incredibles opportunity as just something to do, and they really didn't see themselves as entertainers. But that gave them the confidence to start going for other things that they had only maybe thought about.
That kind of reminds me of the whole notion of being able to pay it forward. I want to know, transitioning from just that attitude of paying it forward, opening doors for other people and being selfless, how did that lead you into where you are now with the kids? Because I'm sure that's not on paper as glorious, but it's probably more fulfilling, having a direct impact. Let's talk about that, what you're doing now, and how bad
okay.
you're here.
Well, actually, I have the Bulls to thank for that as well, because Michael Reinsdorf gave me an opportunity to start the Bulls Entertainment Network. Basically, it's a company inside of the Chicago Bulls organization that he allowed me to start. He bankrolled it, and it was a hit. And so I made the organization a nice amount of money, and I made myself a nice amount of money, and I was able to retire. It was time anyway. Running around when you're 24 years old is a great idea. At 43, not so much. So it was time for me to go. And that gave me the opportunity to come down to New Orleans. I helped out a friend, helped her open a few restaurants and do some things for a couple of years and kind of give myself a little break. And then my son told me that when my son graduated from college, he told me that was really basically my services were no longer needed with him and to do me. So that meant go ahead and re-explore culinary. That was something I had walked away from years ago. And then even when I saw opportunities, they never paid enough for me to raise a child. So I didn't pursue them while I was raising him. So he graduated college. He was good. He was headed overseas, which is where he is right now, in Taiwan. He's an educator. And so I saw an opportunity to teach cooking classes for little kids. And so I was doing that for a couple of years. And then I saw an opportunity to work for a restaurant called Commander's Palace, which is a very big restaurant in the South.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. So I worked there for a few years, and then COVID. So then when COVID hit, I was working nowhere, because I was also not only working at Commander's, I was also teaching cooking classes to Girl Scouts so that they can get their badges, and I was doing private chef duty. And I lost all of that at COVID. Like everybody else lost their jobs, I lost my job. So while I was laid off, I needed something to do, so I was kind of just looking around on mutual aid sites, seeing if there was some place I could go volunteer or go do something, because I was just in the house going crazy. And I saw that there was a community meal happening, and it was a few blocks from where I was living at the time, in the Central City community. So I went to volunteer, just wrapping sandwiches, and thought maybe I'd get a sandwich, I don't have to cook. And got into a conversation with the pastor who was running it. And when he found out what I was doing, he asked me if I wanted to get involved on a larger scale. And one of the things I noticed was that they were wrapping sandwiches, but they were also buying like fried chicken and buying spaghetti and buying these things. And I told him he was going to be through his budget within 3 months. And so I taught them about mass ordering and, advanced planning and different things like that. And he asked me would I come on as the head chef for this community table. And so in the process of that, which was awesome, I was just head over heels. I wasn't getting paid or anything. But it was something for me to do every day. And it was cooking, and I was feeding people. And at that time, when we started, we were feeding about 75 people 2 days a week. And now we feed in those same 2 days about 500 people. Plus we do every second Sunday, we do a kosher meal for 200 to 300 people. So I was just very excited and just very grateful to be part of that program. And in the process of that, I met some board members for a youth development program called Liberty's Kitchen, and a position came open for a culinary instructor, and so they invited me to audition for that. And that was 2 years ago, and I've been here ever since. Let's see. Oh, the last thing I'm really proud of this. I want to talk about it really quick. I am the director for what's called the Carrollton Camp. The Carrollton community is one of the poorest communities in New Orleans. Their average income in certain parts of it is $14,000 to $17,000 a year. Yeah. And that's even for Louisiana with a 725 floor, it's still low. So we do this, we do a camp, actually we do a winter camp for 1 week and we do a summer camp for 2 weeks. And we position them during those out of school times that other camps are done. So those last 2 weeks leading up to the first day of school is when we have our camp for the summer. And then that second week of winter break is when we have our winter camp. And that enables the parents to still have some safe and fun childcare. And also, we know that a lot of the children rely on those school meals as their meals. So they're still getting that breakfast, lunch, and snacks for those days.
I'm blown away. I'm blown away with what I've heard today. And because it's like this, there are a lot of people that have a desire to do big things, but when you see the sacrifice that big things require, you're not getting paid. I wasn't getting paid. Yeah, I am now, but I wasn't then. But again, that was the seed you sowed and vision that kind of opened bigger and greater for you. And I think for us that live in a right now satisfying time, I got to have it now where I'm not walking away. I'm going to walk away from it. You know, that impresses me. But I promise you, I've held up a lot of your time today. But I will say, as the father of 3 beautiful girls and, you know, youth pastoring and everything we do, it's a blessing when you're seeing women, especially women of color from our community, doing phenomenal things. I'm sure when you first started off 5, 10, 15 years ago with your career, I'm not going to age you, even though
I'm pretty sure your audience can do math.
I'm not getting canceled. I'm telling y'all, I'm smarter than that.
Well, I'm 51 and proud of it.
Y'all ain't beat me up. I'm sure that when you started 51 years ago and you were looking at where you would be now, I'm not sure how big your vision was, but now that you've had a lot of life experiences, God has opened so many doors and done some phenomenal things for you. What's one thing you know now that if you were looking at a young lady your age, maybe getting ready to go through some things that you had to get through to get here, what would you tell that person?
One thing I would tell that person, because when I look at everything and all of my experiences, a lot of this I could have done earlier. Some things I should have done earlier, could have done earlier. I believe that I was placed in it at the right time, but I think that had I done certain things earlier in life, I would have been placed in those positions and in those rooms sooner. But a lot of times I asked once, and if I was told no, then the answer was no. So I would tell young ladies, and actually this is something that one of my VPs told me a long time ago, and I've held close to it, and it's actually very effective. Make it very difficult to be denied. He told me that one day, and I've been doing it ever since. And a lot of no's became slow maybes, and they became yeses.
Like you're speaking to me.
Yeah.
You know, because it's I got to say this before we get off the air. When you're talking about just that tenacity, that's a word that that's part of our daily vernacular, having tenacity. You know, sometimes every day you have to approach it like an energy. When you yourself and you carry yourself with that energy, sometimes people would have traditionally have told you no. When you have that push, sometimes you can open doors that might just need a little bit of push, that might need a little bit of access. I always tell kids, you've got multiple doors. One door that you have needs a little pushing. Some doors are voice activated. Some are motion detected. You got to get there in front of it for it to open up for you. And that's a lot of what I heard today. Your life has been opened by a lot of motion, and I want to thank you for taking the time to jump on here with us to share a lot of nuggets that I don't think is just for kids. It's for a lot of adults alike. Looking at vision, that are looking at wanting to do some things, but Peter's kind of in the quicksand. I think we're going to have to get you back on sometime.
Oh, I would love to.
Because you kind of talked about some mass production and culinary things that are tying into some things we're getting ready to set up with our next football camp. We're actually in the process of bringing a celebrity function and a cook-off, and we've got some people connected with this next one that I think will be major for the kids.
Oh, that's awesome.
We will connect more on that front, but thank you, Ms. D.
Thank you.
I wanted this to be more about your personal experience than about Michael Jordan or Scotty or Craig Hodges or any of them. I grew up thinking we were every Saturday morning. So with that said, guys, we've gotten another edition of the End Zone Club. Stay tuned. This is going to be a fire interview, and we've got more to come.
Thank you. Thank you so much.